Hey guys, something I see all the time in forums, on our ice fishing groups, questions that I get asked on our email is how do you go camping on the ice? And so I want to walk you guys through how I get set up to go out and do this in a pop-up shelter. You can see I'm not doing it in an ice castle. I'm not RVing it out here on the ice. I'm up here in the Pacific Northwest. In the top of Washington State, so can't drive on the ice. So let me show you guys what I'm working with so that you guys can get set up in a similar fashion, maybe adjust your setup, or even in the comments let me know what you would set up differently to get out here and ice fish while you're camping, right? There's a lot that goes into this. My big number one warning is like, it is a lot of work. It is a lot of prepping and planning. And so like, you gotta really wanna do it because it's not the most comfortable, easy thing in the world. It makes a sport like ice fishing, which is already hard to do, a bit harder. The cool thing about it, and what I love about it, is that you're on the ice 24 hours a day. And so you can catch a fish at any time. That's what gets me going about it, and that's what I love about it. But it's not for the faint of heart. So let me show you guys how I do it. Hopefully my gear recommendations and like my process will help you guys if you want to start doing this. Oh, there he is. Isn't that awesome? Ah, there's another one. Oh, he's coming right up. Wow, look at that. So, a big thing when you're camping, you need to pre-fish. So like, I got here early in the morning and I hole hopped and like went to like 7 spots that I thought were interesting. And because you have to do all of this work to set everything up, and you don't want to set it up on a bad spot because you're not moving. I'm telling you right now, it's too hard. So I mapped out a bunch of spots that I liked. I wanted to find like a weedy area that had like a weedy transition from a flat to a steep drop off where I could open myself up to a bunch of different species, especially whatever would be feeding at night. And in this lake, that's crappie, right? Because I'm going to be spending the majority of my time fishing at night because I'm camping out here. So I got myself right up on a weed bed, like right on the edge of it, where I know these crappie are going to come up and feed at night because in the middle of the day they're in the basin, and then at night they're going to come up here and feed. So that's where we're fishing. It seems like a bigger bass. Oh, he's kicking the camera. Oh. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Bass. Oh, geez, look at that. Look at that. That is a big bass. I knew there were a bunch of big bass down here. I didn't know if there was like a really big one, but man, this feels like a good fish. Oh, geez. Oh, geez, he's stuck on all the weeds. I gotta pull him out. Maybe he'll get himself out a little bit. Man, he is thumping. Hoo, 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 hoo. Getting him up off the weeds. There we go. There he is. He's off the weeds now. Yeah. There we go. That's fun. That's a blast. How about that? Just a nice largemouth. I always, like, in my videos talk about, like, don't try to target largemouth. They're really hard. on the ice. I've always had a really challenging time finding them. And I do think it's hard to find largemouth on the ice, like in typical scenarios, but I was bouncing around with my camera and I just found this spot when I was looking for crappie and bluegill, and there was like 8 of these down there. So I was like, well, I don't know when that happens, but we're gonna go for it. Lo and behold. This is what I'm talking about with the bass. I've been dropping my camera down, and they just like, they come in these like little pods, and like come right next to the camera. And it's always like right when I drop it down too. It's like they can feel it. I have a gurney bed, which I highly, highly recommend when you're out here camping on the ice. You can't sleep on the ice. You need that separation, because if you don't, you're going to absolutely be frozen. So I pack out a gurney bed. They're like 80 bucks. And on top of sleeping, I have a 0 temperature rated sleeping bag. This is super important because if you get into any situation like your heater doesn't work or whatever, you're gonna survive the night in a 0 rated bag, unless, you know, you're trying to camp out in -15, which you should not be doing in the first place. So that's my kind of sleeping arrangements. I do backpack out like some clothes. I wouldn't recommend more than like 1 set of new clothes. You're not out here showering. What I do recommend is packing at least 3 pairs of socks, because that is the one critical thing that you've got to stay on top of, is having dry feet and dry socks. It's super important. So moving on over, let's go over some like just critical gear to be able to physically do this. I always bring a collapsible shovel so I can kind of clear out this snow from here and lay down some sort of insulating structure. And so here I'm using like a 6-piece connecting gym floor mat. I got it on Amazon. It's like 20-30 bucks. It's easy to pack out because it's, you know, they break down. And this allows like kind of like a 1/2 inch elevation from the ice. It kind of like keeps the cold air from coming up, but really what it does is it allows you to kind of walk around in bare feet from like your sleeping area to your kind of cooking, heating world over here that I'm about to go over. So this is super helpful and comfortable. I also bring a tarp. It's not out right now, but in case it rains or I left the heat on too long and it starts to melt the ice, this can get pretty wet, and that gets devastating. So I put that tarp up over the ground, over all of this stuff. And I don't do it at first, because if you do it at first and you just lay it down and then put everything on top of it, it starts to like pool up the water. And I've learned that the hard way a couple times. So that's more of like a urgent situation. Hey, it's wet in here. Let's stay dry. Okay. Moving on to heat source and cooking sources. This is Mr. Buddy heater. It's a propane heater. It is rated for indoor. Make sure you have that, because it has the automatic turn off. If it tips over or if it senses low levels of oxygen, it'll automatically turn off. That's critically important, because you do run the risk of carbon monoxide poisoning if you run propane in a closed area without any ventilation. And so I have my vents open here. If your shelter doesn't have a vent opening, just like open up your door like, you know, maybe 6 or 7 inches, and let some air flow through. Now, I'm paranoid. I think you should be too, because my Mr. Buddy heater gets banged up a lot, and like I've never ran into the situation where it automatically turns off because it got bad, but because of that, I'm not entirely sure if it would work after the 5 years of hell I brought it through. So I always bring out a battery-powered carbon monoxide monitor. It helps me sleep easier at night. Staying on the propane train, this is a little portable propane heater. It requires a lighter. I always bring a lighter whenever I'm camping, no matter what I do. It's in my coat pocket that's packed up somewhere, but I bring this. It allows me to cook. I always bring a pot rather than a pan. The pot is important because it allows you to do everything a pan can do, but it also allows you to deal with liquids. So if you want to filter and boil your water and not pack out a big case of water, you can do that with a pot. It's really tough to do with a pan. And so going on to food with my pot, I always bring out the pot because I need coffee in the morning. I bring instant coffee out and I boil water early in the morning, and dude, it is a lifesaver when I'm out here. Other food, food in general. If you are backpacking in, or you're just by yourself, you don't have a big group you're going with, I recommend getting these freeze-dried, hydrogenated foods. These little meal kits. They're super lightweight. They're pretty hardy, but they're gross. Like they don't taste great. So if you're going with a big group or you're fishing close by and it's not a big deal to make a couple trips, then I do the old fashioned barbecue where I've got burgers, I've got brats, I've got buns and stuff, and all my frozen stuff is outside right now in the snow. Snacks are important because middle of the day, you've planned to go and cook, but you're on a hot bite or you're just exhausted. You can just eat a bunch of Cliff Bars or beef jerky or whatever. And so I bring like something that's pretty high in calories and protein, and I can just huff down a bunch of those and keep fishing if I want to. Now let's go with like hygiene and general upkeep. I always bring a value pack of hand warmers. This is nice because you can put 2 of them in your sleeping bag. Don't stick them directly onto your skin. I had a buddy that did that and burnt a huge hole in his foot, and it blistered over and it was real gross. So don't do direct to skin when you're sleeping, but you can throw 1 or 2 of them in your sleeping bag if you're wearing clothes. Super nice. It heats up the sleeping bag just perfectly. Hygiene. You're going to have to go number 2 out here, especially if you're camping for like 2 to 3 days. If you're just going a day, it might not happen, but it might happen. So always bring out some toilet paper. What I highly recommend is investing in some biodegradable wipes. They're super easy to pack. They're much more condensed than toilet paper, and it's a lot more comfortable and clean, and easy to dispose of. And so disposal, always bring out some trash bags. I like these Simple Human ones because they're packed up in a little bag like this. These are important because you are going to make more trash than you think you're going to make. And so you got to pack out your trash. You can't leave anything out here. It's super, super poor etiquette. So make sure you bring trash bags. Now, back to number 2. Trash bags are helpful because you really should not shit on the ice, like leaving your shit on the ice. Like other people fish out here, and it's super disrespectful, and it's really poor etiquette. So what you should be doing is you should be hiking back into the woods and defecating there. However, you're also going to run into the problem that maybe there's not public land. Maybe it's just like the access, and then it's just a bunch of houses around. So what I do in that situation is I double bag these and I line my fishing bucket there. This is gross, I know, guys, but like it's actually pretty comfortable. You double line the trash bags, you throw them wrapped around the bucket, and then you do number 2 in here. I highly recommend peeing before you take your shit because it's just a lot easier to pack out and minimal leakage. And it's actually not that bad. Like if you wrap it up really tightly and then put it into the snow, it'll freeze. And then when you're packing out all of your trash, it's not a huge deal. I typically, if I'm by myself, I put all of this stuff, all of this food and hygiene and whatever, my tarp, my whatever's, my sleeping bag, I put that in a hiking backpack and I backpack it in. I'm going with a bunch of guys this weekend, and so if I'm doing a big group or I'm taking a family out, I bring a tote. I can put everything in there. You got to take 2 trips with all your ice gear, but if you throw it all in there, it's nice and waterproof. It serves as a table. I brought my collapsible table, which is what I typically pack out with, and I wanted to show you guys that. But you don't need to bring that if you have the tote because it's just a perfect little table there. I bring a collapsible chair as well, but you know, you don't need it if you're sitting on your bucket. I actually brought it for a friend. And if you're in here, you can just sit on your gurney, which is great. So this is like the basic stuff. Safety wise, if you're in a predator place, I recommend bringing bear mace, and a blowhorn. Now let's go over some like more high-end stuff that isn't totally necessary. This is my Eskimo fatfish. It's not insulated, but that's okay because I'm in the Pacific Northwest. So like it's not gonna get below 15 degrees very often. So I'm gonna be fine in that. But like if you're camping anywhere in the Midwest, I recommend investing in a thermal shelter. My Clam 6-pack thermal is at home at my parents' house in Minnesota, so I don't have that luxury. Other high-end stuff, I'm bringing a generator out today with 5 gallons of gas because we've got a bunch of electronics that me and all the guys are going to be using, and we need to charge them. We're going to be here for 3 days. So we're charging that and all the camera gear and our phones and, you know, yada, yada, yada. It's not totally essential, but it's just a modern convenience having power. And then one cool thing I did with my sled is I fabricated some used skis on it, and it's made these like double trips because I'm pretty far away from the boat launch. It's way over there, making these double trips a lot easier. Totally unnecessary, but hey, it's made my life a lot better. Oh. This feels like a bluegill. Oh, a nice crappie. Smaller, but still good eater class. Yeah, he was a little bit more aggressive than the bluegill have been, which is common. But, you know, it's been an awesome little smackling of fish here in this weed bed. That's what you can kind of typically expect when you're posted right on top of weeds, and that's why I picked this spot for camping, because, you know, it might not be the ideal spot for a specific fish. I mean, it is for bluegill, but like, you know, at night I think that a lot of species frequent the weeds to feed, and I also think that during the day there's always going to be action with something, right? And so like there'll be a perch that'll come in, there'll be bluegills that come in, there'll be a bass, there'll be crappie, and so each one of those has their own specific area and technique to really capitalize on them. But if you can't move around that much because you gotta have a whole camp here, it's good to post up in the weeds. So that's everything. I'm gonna get some fish catches in there too, so that you guys can have some fun on this episode. I'm planning on putting them in earlier and throughout the filming while I'm walking through all this stuff, so it's still a little fun. But as you can see, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of prep. You're gonna forget things. I forgot some things. It's gonna happen. Just make sure that whatever you forget, it's not a critical safety issue. It's not your heater, it's not your propane, it's not your sleeping bag. And definitely check the weather. Like, do not do this if it's like less than like 15 to 20 at night, because like anything can happen. You know, be safe, think it through, prep it, and then only do this if you're really gonna do it, right? Like, it's not for the faint of heart. It can be pretty miserable by like day 2 or 3. You're gonna be like, ugh. So if you're doing it for the first time, I recommend doing it somewhere close to home if you can, and just testing out all of your gear, testing out the process, going through the whole thing and seeing where the pain points are before you go and do some 2 to 3 day joint, you know, hours away from civilization, because it can get pretty uncomfortable. If you do get too cold, go sleep in your car. Like, go and turn it on. You know, I'm hoping that you have enough gas. I wouldn't do that if I have anything less than 3/4 of a tank. But worst case scenario, like, just go sleep in your car. So that's all that I have for you guys. I'm gonna go catch some fish. Oh, bass is just right here. He's trying to figure it out. Oh, there he is. Come on. Oh, 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 oh. There he goes. Oh, oh, that is a bass. Oh, he's knocking the camera.